and welcome to another episode of How to Build a Theatre. This series charts the creation of The Bridge, a new English language theatre in Brussels. And in it we explore different aspects of the performing arts and how they interact with society. My name is Phil Wilcox and I'm a London-based singer-musician.
And I'm Edward Macmillan, co-founder of The Bridge and a Brexiled Brit living in Brussels, Belgium. So in this month's episode, we're joined by Charlie Swan, one of the co-founders of PCA. Hi, Charlie.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thanks. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So Charlie's going to be telling us about how he uses his creative skills to help improve the workplace. But first, we need an update on The Bridge. Ed, tell us what's going on with the creation of The Bridge.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. I was actually thinking before we started recording this that I need to, I trying to be as honest as I can with the audience of this podcast, because part of it is to see the highs and the lows of building, trying to create a new cultural establishment. But let's start with the highs. So our summer theatre workshop is now in full motion. So that's happening at the end of August. We were struggling for a long time to find a location, but now we have that. That's going to be at the Piano Fabrique in Saint-Gilles, which is a fantastic rehearsal space at the end of August. It's for 10 to 18-year-olds, acting, singing, dancing. We've got people coming over from the UK to teach this. It's going to be great. Like we've got the sign-ups ready and open. We're about half full at the moment, so we're good, and but we can do with a few more. So come along if this sounds interesting. Applications are closing pretty soon. And in preparation for this, I've been basically watching over and over again The Greatest Showman, because that's going to be the inspiration for our week. And I've been singing the songs to myself and spending too much time looking at Hugh Jackman. So that's the side of the summer theatre workshop. I actually wanted to do some other community participation activities during the summer, but for various reasons that is not going to happen, which is a shame. But that's it enables us to start planning for September. So then in September we're also hoping to start a weekly academy for kids. The thing with Brussels is that it's extremely hard actually to find a location for these activities. So that's actually been the sticking point that for me at the moment. So finding somewhere with 3 different rehearsal spaces, because we want to have acting, singing and dancing classes all at the same time simultaneously in 3 different spaces. And actually Brussels isn't very well equipped for that, which is a shame. I feel.
Add into that the wonders of COVID as well. I don't know, you say you had some great plans for the rest of summer. We're recording this at the start of June, and I don't know what it's like in Brussels, but here in the UK, it's still pretty unsure. People are still, they're planning, but it still feels a little bit rocky. Yeah,
I have to admit, Phil, I am essentially pretending that COVID does not exist, because I think that's easier with the planning. I mean the rules change all the time, and you have to cope with them when you can. But I think you just have to be optimistic about things and assume that you can do things, at least for the summer. I think I would be a bit more skeptical when we're heading towards the winter, and January, February, March, I would imagine some further restrictions coming back in. But at least until then, I'm fairly hopeful that we'll be in a good position. And in Belgium's slightly behind the UK in terms of vaccination, but numbers are slowly but surely coming down here. So I'm hopeful for that. I mean, one big thing, actually, to be honest, is ensuring that there is travel between the UK and Belgium for our summer theatre workshop, because we have our teachers coming from the UK. So I hope that they can come. But as I said, I'm being optimistic about everything.
Ted, I think the government are following your planning approach in terms of just pretending COVID's not there. So I think you're in good company.
So true.
Me and Boris Johnson, we are best friends. So that's great to hear. But then apart from that, so some community participation activities. I feel that internally, organizationally, we're slowly growing the team. So there's quite a lot of different supporters here in Brussels for the project, and I feel it's kind of slowly but surely going to the next stage of it being just a crazy British guy here with an inspirational project to something that is actually with some people together, and we're trying to push this together towards the authorities and trying to make sure that this happens. So that's also nice. So we're going kind of from a me to a we situation, which is also what I want. So the bridge is building bridges within Brussels, which is lovely.
Oh, beautiful. You're building your team. And it's great to hear month by month how everything's progressing so much, because I know it's a small team at the moment, but you're doing great work, especially not, disregarding the fact that there's the back end of a global pandemic. You're doing really great work to build everything up. So thanks for the update, Ed. Let's bring Charlie in. So Charlie and I have never met, but I know that you and Ed, or Ted, depending how he goes by, go back a long way. We like to break the ice with a few quick fire questions, if you're happy with that, Charlie.
Absolutely.
They're easy. Don't worry. Nothing too hard. So the first one I kick off with, tea or coffee?
Tea, without a doubt, 6 times a day.
Oh gosh, right. So you're wired. Sunny days in or cozy... Oh, sorry. Sunny days out or cozy nights in?
Sunny days out, followed by cozy days and evenings in.
Very good. Would you say, introvert or extrovert?
I've always been an extrovert, but the last few years I've actually thought maybe I've always been an introvert pretending to be an extrovert.
The last couple of years has taught us lots, isn't it, about ourselves? Zoom meeting or in-person meeting?
In-person will always be my preference, but Zoom meetings have created a connection which I think all of us might have wanted for many years and never imagined. So I have full appreciation of the connection of Zoom, but of course, always would love to have people in person.
And I know that you're, having just done a little bit of travel, you're quarantining at the moment. So what are you doing to keep yourself occupied? Are you reading anything or watching series or something?
Phil, I've been working. That's the bottom line.
You've been working.
And looking forward to seeing yourself and Ted, of course. We are renovating our house at the moment, so behind the scenes I'm doing a ton of work around that. It's just been full-on work as it has been, to be honest, for the last 18 months.
Oh, it's good to hear, to be fair. And finally, what was your first job?
First job? Now, we're talking a long time ago, so I think it would have been washing cars. And then it was working in a warehouse. And then it was gardening at the back of King's Cross for a couple of years whilst I was at uni. So
gardening at the back of King's Cross?
It was literally... It was end of the 90s, York Way, Somerstown. It still wasn't particularly very nice. And I was given a spade to do the gardening, but it was plastic because apparently the metal ones were dangerous when used as weapons. I thought, this is a great job.
Nice, very manual jobs there.
Not bad for a lawyer, right?
Yeah. So this leads me nicely into what you're up to now. So you are now the Chief Growth Officer at PCA, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Great, and so tell us a little bit about that and how did you get into this position? So
after my illustrious career as a gardener, that was obviously short-lived, but I suppose I hasten to add that was to supplement my training as a lawyer in my early 20s. So I was a lawyer for 8 years at a big international law firm, where I was an environmental lawyer. So I did lots of kind of nuclear new build, environmental investigations, kind of big litigation. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Worked in London, but worked obviously internationally. And then in my late 20s, made the orthodox career path change to go to drama school, as you know. So I went to...
Excellent choice.
An excellent choice, exactly right. So I went to Mountain View Academy and did a post-grad in musical theatre, and then was a jobbing actor for a few years. But at the same time, I had the intention of having a dual career. My dual career intention was to focus on essentially learning and development at the time. And so my idea was to take my experience of working in the kind of commercial corporate world and take my experience of working in the theatre and performance and creative space and kind of bring those capabilities and those skills together in order to help people in a commercial environment, develop and learn. So that was kind of the beginning of the transition from, I suppose, the corporate world into more of a learning and development world. And I suppose that's link between, I suppose, the credibility of the business experience and the creativity of the theatre and performance experience. That's been at the very heart of PCA's success since we created it many years ago. It's really, I suppose, it's the combination of the two, the straddling of the two, which has allowed us to essentially help people to build their confidence and help them to grow. So that's basically where the story started.
Brilliant. And just to make sure that everyone's on the same page as well, Charlie, PCA, you're at a cocktail party, you're meeting new people, someone says, just give me in a nutshell, what is PCA? Just explain that for us, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page.
Yeah, so we help large global brands and large organizations. We help the leaders in those organizations, leaders at all levels, so whether you're a first-time grad or your C-suite, we help them to lead in a human-centered and purpose-driven way.
It's really interesting. And in terms of the nuts and bolts, because just thinking about people listening to this podcast, they're probably going to be coming at it from a theatre perspective, but very interested, as we are today, in how that impacts the sort of the business world and the community at large. The nuts and bolts of it, so you're taking aspects of what you study and engage with in performing arts and putting that into is it sort of putting it into the workplace, but it sounds like you're actually, it's not necessarily into the workplace, or I assume maybe you have a mental health sort of arm to everything, which obviously Ed and I have discussed in great detail over the last few episodes about the arts generally, music, drama, theatre, dance, etc. Going into the workplace is a great tool for improving mental health. But it sounds like you're taking it to another level as well, and actually teaching, you're sort of imparting knowledge using aspects that you work on in theatre and performing arts. Is that right?
Well, I love your focus on mental health because, the global pandemic, it's led to wide-scale disruption, I suppose social reprioritization in terms of what's important to us, and it's put a huge amount of pressure on mental health and well-being. And as we look to sustain our growth going forwards, mental health and having a calm, energized, peaceful mind, that's going to be our greatest resource as human beings. So organizational success will require mental health to be not only just about surviving, which it has been historically, but to evolve our idea around mental health so it genuinely is about thriving. Now, how do we do that in terms of, I suppose, that theatrical piece? What role does that play in it? I suppose what we do is we give people a lived experience around the things that we want them to be considering and reflecting and discussing and applying. So we give them a lived experience so they can get some dexterity around some of the capabilities that they require in order to lead, whatever level they're at. And I suppose that lived experience is the human element. That's the bit we're passionate about. All the things we're talking about, and for PCA as a business, has humanity at its core. That is our mission. Our mission is to create a world which is inclusive, connected, relational, and has humanity at its core. So the arts and using creative processes play a central role in allowing us to bring that humanity into what we're trying to help them achieve. So creativity, as I say, it's alongside the credibility, is absolutely essential to giving people that human and lived experience so that they develop the confidence and the capability to actually go on and achieve the outcomes that they want to do.
And creativity, as we know, working in the arts, is born out of a positive, open space, isn't it? We know physically, just practically in rehearsals, if there's a bad vibe in the room, if there's a bad energy in the room, it draws things down. But if you're allowed to be open, free, I mean, these words are obviously they're potentially overused, but they're packed full of meaning. If it's in a positive atmosphere, that's when creativity happens, isn't it, and thrives.
Absolutely, and I think that's why I love the idea of the bridge in its very literal sense. The corporate world and the creative theatrical world, I suppose there's always been a divide. And when we've worked historically in the corporate world and we bring the idea of creative and creativity in theatre, there's always a bit of suspicion, and you've got some bad experiences and some myths and legends and some stigma attached to it. And I think what we're really seeing now is actually the arts and the corporate world, the bridge between the two really is humanity and theatre. and storytelling. The corporate world will succeed going forwards by having a greater affinity and a greater focus on humanity and storytelling and humans. Equally, the theatre world will continue and, I suppose, regain its strength through the help of corporates and that commercial focus. Because I suppose what corporates will hopefully do is make people realise the absolute value of the theatre world and these critical capabilities that you've just been talking about, Phil, which is, creating in that open space on a stage is a very powerful capability. Creating a space is a very powerful capability. And, business people need to be able to have that capability to create a space when they need to. So you can have that thinking, you can have that intimacy in your conversation, that focus. So I think a lot of the valuable skills which actors bring to creating spaces and creating creativity, they are capabilities which need to be, shared and developed by all humans in order to have more collaborative, effective, productive, creative, inspiring conversations.
I'm inspired.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for this, Charlie. I mean, I completely agree with your focus, and I completely agree. This is also part of the reason why I wanted to invite you on is to kind of demonstrate the arts and theatre is not just restricted to theatre and performers. It has so much wider social benefits, and both from just a general society point of view, but also how we interact with each other in every situation, including in the workplace. And I think this, as you say, this bridging between the corporate and the arts world, like there shouldn't be such a divide in the skill set, but there seems to be sometimes this kind of different skills that people learn.
Yeah, and I think
it's great.
If we look at this from the human perspective, then, the humans that are in the theatre world are exactly the same as the humans that are in the corporate world. Their context is obviously different, but the capabilities that allow them to succeed in each, they're actually the same. And I suppose that's the common denominator. And I think up until now, we've found it hard to bridge that gap. But actually, the success of both contexts going forwards will require moving towards this humanity. And really moving towards, I suppose, these creative skills. So, yeah, I think we're in exactly the right place, because I think it is about the future of humans and how we can sustain our growth and thrive and be happy and be healthy and have good mental health and well-being. It does really require us to focus on this in a way which we never have done before.
You've just taken PCA to the next level. Could you tell us a bit more about this and the transformation that PCA has undertaken?
Yeah, sure. So, as I say, I suppose where we started was, we started in the legal sector. So, given my own background, PCA originally was PCA Law, and we started working and specialising in the legal sector, given that a number of people in our team had a legal background. And so we kind of specialised in the legal sector and did a lot of work helping lawyers and kind of business service professionals in law firms around their skills. So things like business development and performance management and personal professional development. And we did very well. We worked with a ton of law firms around the world, some of the best firms in the world, which is fantastic. But as a result of that, we also started to work with, I suppose, the best-in-class clients of those law firms. So we've been very privileged to work with many of the leading global brands, household names. So that's been a real privilege, and I think that's because if you work with the English international law firms or English headquartered international law firms, clearly you must know what you're doing. And so I think there was always a real perception that if you've come from the English legal sector, there must be a real credibility piece. So it really helped us, I suppose, just to start to have conversations with kind of big global brands. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we've done a huge amount of work around the world, kind of over 40 countries now, with over 150 kind of global brands. And on that journey, I suppose we started to move more towards, I suppose, how do we help affect culture in organizations? And that, from building on that, it kind of led to us looking at, well, actually, how do we help leadership? And leadership at all levels. So, for us, leadership is that personal moment of ownership that any of us can choose to take when we're making decisions. So leadership is not something for the privileged few, it's for everyone. And so we started to really, move towards wanting to focus on leadership in terms of PCA. And as I said before, when the pandemic kind of hit us, it afforded us an opportunity to just pause for a moment and reconnect with our identity and essentially relaunch the business. So we relaunched PCA as a specialist provider around leadership. And we have PCA Law still, which is our specialist legal sector business. So that remains. It's a fantastic business. We've got excellent clients. We love working in the legal sector. But alongside that, we now have this specialist human-centered leadership offering. And really, that's been at the heart of our work for the last year. It's been focusing on that and a move to live hybrid formats, the live hybrid format. So really looking at how we can have both in-person events at the same time as people attending virtually. So that experiential format of the live hybrid, that has also been at the heart of our focus over the last year.
It's funny that you say you start in as PCA Law, specifically an arts organisation operating within the law community and sector. Just coincidentally, I run, as part of my career, I run choirs in law firms via a company that puts music in the office space. And the amount of time, and I also happen to teach a couple of lawyers privately singing, the amount of times we'll cover things, whether it's a breathing exercise, a visualization exercise, talking about finding meaning in text that we're singing, that sort of stuff. The amount of things that we cover while I'm running choir with them or teaching them, they say, gosh, some guys came in the other day and talked to us about presentation or how to take up space in an office, how to deliver this, how to make your clients comfortable and confident. The amount of crossover there is amazing. And I think it speaks to that, like you say, it's going back to what you were saying earlier about the arts, feeding the shared skill space that we've got in those two.
I think historically there was some snobbery about bringing those types of skills or having that focus in the commercial corporate space. The idea of bringing actors in to help you with your breathing, most lawyers would turn their nose up and run a mile. And I think that's what's changing, because there's obviously an enhanced recognition now of humans and humanity and health and, our physical bodies and our minds. And the theatre creative capabilities that we as actors have used for many, many years, I suppose there's a recognition that actually they are the same things which we as lawyers need to use. And I think there's been very, many, I suppose, transformational moments where you'll have some kind of technical expert, whether it's a lawyer or in a different sector, because obviously this is not just for lawyers, but you'll have those moments where there's a real breakthrough because they've actually learned to breathe. And, learning to breathe, that's pretty important. And if you can learn to breathe well, it's probably going to have a significant impact on every aspect of your life, particularly in those, those challenging high stakes moments as a lawyer. If you can maintain your calm and keep that clear, open mind and have that well-being in the moment, you're probably going to make some good decisions. So I think it's really connecting the crucial value of those human skills, which, as I say, and as you've experienced historically, some of our clients perhaps wouldn't have given them much airtime. But now it's become much more normalised, much more accepted. And that's just fantastic news.
I mean, it really sounds like you're tapping into something that your clients want, and this is kind of you're kind of acting at the right moment, I guess. And I wonder if you could diagnose why there has been this shift in big corporates towards this acceptance towards using these actor skills, or if there are any global movements to suggest that this was going to happen. Or
I think the single answer is there is now a great demand for purpose in the world. If we think back to the World Economic Forum, the Davos Manifesto, the business roundtables, They were all looking at how do these huge organizations in the world start to have sustainable growth and have value creation, which involves everyone, involves all stakeholders. So ultimately, we're talking about a move from shareholder capitalism, where there's just a few people who are benefiting, to stakeholder capitalism, where everyone's involved. And I think that move to stakeholder capitalism, that's really been in the context also of the ESG environment, so environmental sustainability and governance. That world of ESG, which we're all now navigating. Essentially, there are stakeholder expectations that we operate in a way that's going to help the environment and help people and help society and help culture, which is amazing news. And investors and shareholders and governments and countries are going to have to start making their decisions based on things that satisfy these requirements. Now, humans are at the heart of that. So I think the answer, why has it changed right now? There's just a greater expectation around purpose and leading with purpose. So you have leaders around the world who have this really difficult situation. They've got to continue growing financially, as we've always expected them to do. But now they've also got to do it, I suppose, with a conflicting objective of doing it the right way. Mm. And doing it in a way which helps people and helps the community and helps the environment. So leaders are in a really challenging position. So I suppose in terms of, the human aspect of this, for us, we very much see, in terms of sustainable growth, humanity is key to that. Healthy humans doing great work, working really well together around the world, whatever context that we are talking about.
And how is it that you this might be going a little bit too deep into it, but how is it I should imagine that some of the people at the top of these companies maybe are slow to change, if that's fair to say. How are you sort of digging? And I can imagine as well that there's a lot, obviously, over the last few years, mental health in the workplace, sustainability in the workplace, etc., has become right to the top of the pile. And dare I say it, maybe sometimes it's seen as as an add-on. But then from what you're saying today, this is clearly not your message, that it's got to be core of it. How are you actually, convincing, maybe that's the wrong word, but how are you, speaking to people at the top of these companies and changing minds, and are they quick to come with you, or is it still a case of like, we need to just sort of work on this? Yeah,
I suppose every stage of the spectrum, you're going to have some examples. I suppose COVID's been a great leveler. Mm-hmm. And we've all been through an intense, obscure experience. And it's a deep experience, which we've all felt. So I think a lot of the barriers which we would have experienced previously amongst senior leaders, a lot of those barriers, I suppose, have slowly been kind of worn away, because at a human level, they get it. They're exhausted and depleted, just like their teams. And many organisations have had a really fantastically successful year during 2020. That's the irony. But in terms of sustaining that growth going forwards, we all recognise that actually we can't just keep on going. Mm. We're going to have either new problems or further problems. So I think there is a growing recognition that health and well-being really is, essential. Not because it's a nice and right thing to do, but actually I've experienced it and seen it. We need to keep the team healthy and motivated and galvanised and connected and feeling included. All things which are very hard to do when you're working remotely. So I think there is a broad acceptance of the critical nature of moving towards this. But yes, in the moment, I suppose a lot of leaders still think, yeah, it's fine. We'll get back to normal. It'll all be fine. But I think underneath, there is a deeper recognition of just how fundamental the shift has been. Humans now are not what they were a year ago. We are not the same. Our mindsets have been shifted. So that's why the theatre space and the creative space is a fabulous place to engage people with. Because as you said before, Phil, if you can create that safe space and you allow people to sit in that creative space to explore some of the challenges which they're currently having to deal with, new conversations that leaders and managers are having to have with each other and their teams around mental health and things which we wouldn't normally have talked about. If we can offer them a theatrical, creative space, they can try stuff out and become comfortable, and they can explore this new world together as a team. So I think, the creative piece is absolutely essential to giving people a new lived experience through which they can start to get the confidence and the capability to, I suppose, be successful in this new context and this new routine that we're going into.
I'm minded so much when you speak of, do you know The Inner Game of Tennis, the Timothy Galloway book from the 70s? So much of it is this it just sort of speaking to me. I mean, it's a little book, isn't it? But it talks about the idea of once you've trained, you've learnt, you've intellectualized, you've got that skill set down absolutely to a T. At some point, it needs to go over into what he terms the right brain, the creativity side, to just allow the body, in his case, obviously, to whack the ball to the other side of the net in the way that you know that you've trained and you're able to do. It's the same thing. These people have become successful people in their businesses. They have learnt, they have read, they have studied. Now, let's put them in their creative mode, and that's the one that humans thrive in and excel in.
Yeah, it's a complete balance, because I suppose those technical skills remain crucial. And the technical skills are what many successful, professionals, is what they have ascended on. They've ascended on the basis of their technical expertise. And that's very powerful and important, but it's not enough. And actually it's undermining if you ascend solely on the basis of that. You need to also, alongside that, have some other human capabilities and expertise. And then I suppose it's about balancing those. And that's where, yes, this broader creative conversation comes in.
Charlie, we've been talking very deeply, but I just want to come back a bit on a more, I want to say superficial, just a more lighter level, let's say. I saw at one point you sometimes work with the improv group Showstoppers. I was just wondering how they fit into all of this and what kind of work you do with them.
Yeah, we have the absolute privilege of working with what I can only describe as superhumans. The Olivier Award-winning Showstoppers. They are an incredible group of people who we've been very lucky to partner with over the last 4 or 5 years, and we've travelled the world with them, essentially using their improvised musical approach in client events and corporate events. And essentially, how we work together is they do. Obviously, what can only be described as just awe-inspiring performances. Where they improvise a musical in the moment, through the audience. Obviously, as you know, nothing is created previously, so it's new songs, new lyrics, new words, new characters, new stories. So all of it's fully improvised, and we've seen them hundreds of times now, and every time is an absolute joy. And how we use them, we use Showstoppers as an immersive experiential tool, where we will have an audience watch the Showstoppers put on the performance, and then having watched that performance, which is normally around, say, between 30 to 40 minutes, we will then finish the performance, applaud hugely as we always do, but then have a debrief. And the facilitated debrief is critical because I suppose it's about the so what. Why is what the audience have just seen at their conference or their event? Why is that important to their world? How can we ground it in their reality? How can we make it relevant? And so I suppose the debrief is always around some very human context and human skills around teamwork, failure, experimentation, communication, feedback, agility, bravery, courage. And we use that immersive format, I suppose, just as a platform to explore, well, how can I take some of those human capabilities? How can I take some of those communication skills or that ability to trust each other in the moment? How do I take that back into my world as a leader to inform my leadership and my capabilities and my behaviours in the moment? So the Showstoppers are just a wonderful group of people, and it's about how do we make that relevant to, I suppose, the commercial people that we are showing that performance to.
I mean, I guess in a way you are enabling the people you work with in the businesses to appreciate theatre. I mean, the improvisation there, but I expect also later on theatre more generally. You're enabling them to appreciate theatre in a new way. They're not just a passive audience member anymore. They're suddenly almost analysing, how the characters are interacting and what the actors are doing in order to make this feast for their eyes.
Yeah, we at PCA, we have obviously a ton of experiential methods and tools. Showstoppers, without doubt, is probably the most successful one because people are just inspired by what they see as being capable. And, purely from an experience of the performance, they just love it. And they often haven't seen it, and they're just amazed at what they've just been involved in. But then also, I suppose, grounding it in something which is practical and relevant to them, they appreciate, I suppose, the link between the two. And it gets them to start, I suppose, engaging with a different part of their mind, gets them to start considering things which perhaps they haven't considered before. So it's a really valuable and powerful tool to get people to start to reflect individually and collectively as a team around some of these really important capabilities which perhaps they haven't given that much import to previously.
It sounds amazing, Charlie. I can't wait. I've just Googled them. I'm going to go and see them.
They are unbelievable. They are just unbelievable group of people, so talented in terms of what they do.
Yeah. I've heard about the improvised musical thing. I just think it's such an amazing idea from a inside the arts perspective, but also just for anyone to go and see. I bet it's just so electric.
Last year we did I think it was a world's first. It was a fully improvised, virtual, socially distanced musical with them, and it was, I think, the most exciting project we've ever done at PCA.
Because why not?
Yeah, why not? And we certainly didn't think it was possible at the beginning of COVID, but then by the summer when we did it for the first time, it was a fabulous experience.
How amazing it's been to see how different arts companies have responded to being forced online or in back gardens or outdoors events and hybrid events and stuff like that. So finally, if we could just zoom out, I realise you've got to get going in a second to another meeting, I expect, as you're working so full on at the moment. One of the key topics of this podcast series revolving around the bridge and the formation of the theatre is the impact of theatre and arts on society in general. I mean, you've spoken at great length. It's been really brilliant to hear about how your career spanning both law and the arts, and then your work with PCA is going into the workplace to do that. Just a few words, if you will, on how you see the role of theatre and the arts in society more generally.
Yeah, I see it as an access point and a platform for connection. I think that's the key thing. I think at the heart of this is human connection and inclusion. And I appreciate this is more than 10 words, so I'll try and keep it short. But I think that's the key message. It's how do we use the power of theatre? And theatre obviously has been around, as long as we have. The art of storytelling. How do we use that innate capability to create human connection and social inclusion? That spans across the theatre world, the corporate world, the political world, every world. Ultimately, anywhere where there's a human being. And I think theatre has a central role to play in that. Because theatre is a human experience applying some human capabilities, which we can all develop, whatever context we're in order to communicate between ourselves. So I think theatre obviously has had an incredibly challenging chapter, and I think going forwards, its success will be very much aligned with the success of, I suppose, sectors which perhaps it wasn't connected with in any way, like the corporate and the commercial world. And I think that can only be a good thing, and hence that's the bridge. It's trying to connect these different sectors and these different contexts so that they can mutually benefit at the human level. I think that was 86 words. Apologies.
Good counting. Excellent words.
Charlie Swan, this was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. And quite inspiring, actually, I have to say. So thank you so much for coming to talk to us today and for sharing your thoughts. It's been a pleasure.
No, thank you to both of you. So, this is important stuff we're all talking about. So I really appreciate the opportunity to talk through it. And obviously, I'm going to wish the bridge the greatest success. And as I say, I love the name of it. I think that is what we're all trying to achieve. So really well done to you both as well.
Maybe we'll see you on tour.
Absolutely will do.
Phil, thanks again for coming.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We have run out of time, and we'll be back next month with another episode of How to Build a Theatre. Thanks for joining.
You've been listening to How to Build a Theatre, a podcast brought to you by The Bridge and English Theatre for Brussels. The podcast was presented by me, Edward Macmillan, and Phil Wilcox, with music by Smith the Mister, available through audiolibrary.com.ca. For further information, check out www.thebridge.brussels. See you next month.